And in this lay the tragic irony of Spanish America. The land was there, the bounty, the promise of independence. What was not there was the experience of democracy. Unable to put their houses in order, one country after another swung endlessly between anarchy and tyranny.
Sometimes murals by the Mexican artist Diego Rivera can look suspiciously like comic strips, something which perfectly suits the prototypical Latin American comic opera tyrant, the Mexican general Santa Anna, who was 11 times president of Mexico between independence and the middle of the 19th century, and was capable of staging coups against himself. He lost a leg in a battle and had it buried with great pomp and splendor and blessed by the Archbishop in the National Cathedral. When he fell from power, the populace unburied the leg and dragged it through the streets of Mexico City. When he came back to power, he once more buried the leg with all pomp and splendor and so on. But he lost something more than his leg. In 1848, the United States waged an unjust war against Mexico in the name of manifest destiny. And Santa Anna lost fully one-half of the national territory of Mexico, all of our northern provinces from Texas to California. There was nothing funny about this, and the event left a profound wound in the Mexican national soul. But when Santa Anna rewarded himself by naming himself Most Serene Highness, the nation revolted against him, led by the Liberal Party, one of whose most prominent members was a lawyer called Benito Juarez.
Now, for the first time in our independent history, a full-blooded Indian became president of the Republic. At the age of 12, he was like any other of the illiterate shepherd boys who can still be found tending the family animals in the hills above the town of Oaxaca in southern Mexico. There he might have spent his days. But through the influence of his sister, who was working in the city, he was taken into the house of a Franciscan priest who taught him to read and write in Spanish. This good father nurtured the hope that the young boy, who would one day be known as the scourge of the Catholic Church, might study for the priesthood. Instead, he became a lawyer.
March 21st has become a national holiday in Mexico. It is the date of the birth of Benito Juarez. Now, I recall that when I was 17 years old, I was studying at a Catholic prep school in Mexico City, and the priests did not celebrate March 21st because they considered Juarez to be some kind of villain of Mexican history. So many of the students, many of my school chums and I banded together so as to strike to celebrate March 21st and thus honor Benito Juarez and what he stood for. We were threatened with expulsion from the school, but finally we were not. And I think the reason is that we were right.
Time makes legends out of popular heroes. But why was the presidency of Benito Juarez so vital to the future of Mexico, and indeed to the whole of Spanish America?
Well, to begin with, I think that no one tried more seriously to make the dreams of Simón Bolívar and San Martín become true. Strong institutions, not strong men. Civilian government, not military rule. No one above the rule of law. The creation of a modern secular state. To obtain all of this, Benito Juarez separated church from state. He nationalized the idle wealth accumulated by the church during the colonial years and set it into economic circulation. He abolished the privileges of the aristocracy and the army. What did he get in response? A double whammy. First, the conservatives in opposition to Juarez's laws plunged the country into 3 years of civil war. And when they were defeated in battle by Juarez, they searched for support abroad and found it in France, where Napoleon III dreamt of creating a French empire in the Americas. The French and the Mexican conservatives put the crown of Mexico on the head of the Austrian Prince Maximilian of Habsburg, a descendant of Charles V and Philip II. It was a phantom crown.
After a bumpy ride from the coast, Maximilian and his Belgian wife, the Empress Carlota, were installed in Chapultepec Castle, in the heart of Mexico City. From the grand staterooms, Maximilian tried to assert his independence. In spite of howls of protest from Rome, he attempted to uphold the confiscation of church property decreed by Juarez. But in reality, he was not independent. He was a puppet backed by the bayonets of the French army. When he was prevailed upon to sign the so-called Black Decree, condemning to instant execution any Mexican found bearing arms, he condemned himself to death. Carlota's fate would be almost as bleak. She was destined to lose both her husband and her wits. But the people were not impressed. They had glimpsed a land of a different kind, offered by a man who was one of them, a land of freedom and self-determination. With massive public support, Juarez raised a volunteer army to challenge this royalist regime imposed from overseas.
In this carriage, President Juarez traveled across the deserts of northern Mexico, loaded with archives, unbending, uncompromising, but perhaps hurt and amazed that the European civilization he had come to admire so much and hoped to emulate had turned her back on him, denying Mexico the right to rule herself. For from this government on wheels, Benito Juarez was defending the independence of all of Latin America.
The resistance of his guerrillas forced the French to abandon Maximilian. Leading a small group of loyalists, the emperor surrendered after the siege of Querétaro. Unbending to the last, Juarez refused clemency to Maximilian. This old photograph shows the execution of this bewildered man. He had decreed the death of thousands of Mexican patriots. Now he faced his own.